Hello folks, welcome back. At long last, we're going to get to the movement itself. When we looked at the movement earlier, we could see some wear that needed addressing in a couple of the pivots. We're going to take care of that. We're going to look over the whole movement and we're going to finally get the clock running. I've got the movement partially disassembled and now we can see this more clearly. This is the worst of the shafts in the plate. This actually looks surprisingly round, so how do we know where the shaft is actually supposed to be? And the way that we do that is we run the train forward and backwards and we can see where this moves. So I know that if I turn the cable drum this way, that winds the clock, which means the clock's operating direction is the opposite way. And if I put tension there, we can see this shaft wants to go down and to the right under power. That's where the tension of the gear train is. And that's also going to be the direction of wear. So I'm going to want to center my hole at the opposite side of that to push the shaft back where it was. So I'm going to make a little note of that and then up the train here as well. You can see that this guy has migrated a little bit. So I think we're going to do those two bushings on this front side, and then I'm going to flip this over and just verify on the back. We might do one in the back as well, but this one in the middle is our major objective here. I've got the front plate in the mill, and I'm trying to take some care with the finish on this. By the way, in one of the earlier sections of the video, I mentioned that this is iron. This is not. This is actually cast brass, which is very cool. It's just painted. Right now I'm using a center drill just to place the machine where I want to be. I want to cheat this a little bit in that direction toward my original mark on here with the blue tape. So now that I've got this in place, I'm going to swap in the bit that I'm going to use to actually drill this out. On the second hole, I've lined up using the same method. This is going to be a smaller hole for a basically 1/4 inch bushing. So I'm trying to remove as little material as I can. Well, a clock is apart. I wanted to just show you some of the pieces. Here is the maintaining power arrangement. This gigantic black spring here meshes like so and provides our so-called battery backup. We have our main winding drum, and that's where the cable feeds through, and the click spring right there. So this is really huge and very, very nicely made, ready to go back together. Here are the two new bushings in the back plate. I decided to do both sides of both of these two wheels. That I think is going to give us the clearance we need. And just going to go through and finish polishing the shafts on this. They're in pretty good shape. I believe the previous restorer did some work on this, so just a little bit of touch up on that. And this is going to be ready to go back together. So again, we have the two rear bushings, and we have the matching ones on the front side. And this is the result of all of our polishing and bushing work. So that's really great. The movement's running really well, and this is with no oil. So time to finish putting this back together. I will say there is oil on the shafts. I put 3-in-1 oil just on the surfaces of this, just with the oily rag. And the intention of that is to give it a film that will inhibit rust, but I don't have any oil in the pivots yet. So very encouraged by this. Time to press on. Here is our cable attachment for the drum. This is just a end stop ferrule that crimped, and that's going to fit nicely in our drum here. Make that disappear, and that should hold our cable in place. For the other end of this, it needs to be removable, so we're going to use these U-bolts on that side. The path of the weight goes up to the top of the clock to a pulley, down to the pulley in the weight, and then hangs up back at the top of the clock. So we'll get this all in place and then figure out the right length, and then we can adjust it and cut it at that point. And we have a functional clock. Got the movement mounted. There is the pendulum at the bottom with all the electrical junk for the landscape lights. On the front here, we have the beat adjustment, so did a little bit of work to get that going. We've got the first pulley right there, which the cable then loops down to the pulley in the weight, and then it hooks at the top of the clock right there. And that's basically it. So the minute adjuster there, got that synchronized with the hands on the clock. Got a little bug here checking out what's going on. There's at the top here a U-joint set up, and then the shaft that runs down from the dial, there's a little dog that drives the slot, which is how you slip the hands so that the setting dial matches what's up above. And that's the basic operation. Been timing the clock, trying to get it in the range. There's an adjustment here at the top of the movement, and then there's one, the nut at the bottom of the pendulum as well. And got a little bit to go here, a couple beats slow, but yeah, it's coming together. Here's the view from the back. For whatever reason, the weight is a little bit out of balance, so I've got just a brick sitting on here to level that a little bit. I'll try to find something metal, either some lead or something to put on there to weight this down. I do have some of that stashed away. I made a calculation on how much weight cord I need here based on how we set the weight in place. I haven't wound this up all the way, nor have I let it run down. So at the moment I have a little bit of cable as a tail. This will be cut off when I know how much is actually required here. But that's basically it. So a view from the back, the weight in the weight chase, and it's running. For the weight, we were initially planning to peen the shaft over to make it like how it was, but we ended up not being able to pound enough to make that happen, so we ended up drilling and tapping the both ends of that new shaft, and it's fine. There's some Loctite on it, and it's not spinning, so it's gonna work great. As you can see from the scenery, it's been some time since our last video clip here. Part of that was a busy fall on my part, and part of that was wanting to see how the clock actually runs over some time. The good news is it keeps absolutely fantastic time. The bad news is when we get below zero, I believe the choice of grease that I made at the top of the drive shaft is a little stiff for the extreme cold. So unfortunately, to solve that, I have to take a dial off, and we'll see how soon that becomes the top of my priority list. But other than that, the clock has been just a fantastic part of the property here, and I appreciate you following along. Thanks very much for watching.